In a quiet little town surrounded by green fields and tall trees, there lived an old man named Mr. Henry. People in the town called him Grandpa Henry. His small house sat at the end of a dusty road with a wooden fence around the garden and a big oak tree in the front yard. The house was simple but cozy. Flowers bloomed near the steps, and birds often sang on the fence. Grandpa Henry lived alone. He used to live with his wife, Margaret, but she had passed away 5 years ago. They had 2 sons, Jack and Peter. Both sons were grown up now. Jack was 40 years old, and Peter was 38. They lived in different towns, and they rarely came to visit. Every morning, Grandpa Henry woke up early. He made himself a cup of tea, fed the birds, and watered the flowers. He would sit on his wooden chair by the window and stare out into the yard, remembering the days when his house was full of laughter, footsteps, and love. But now, it was silent. Before we jump back in, tell me, where are you watching this video from below? And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's episode is extra special. The silence in the house made his heart heavy. It wasn't just the quietness that bothered him. It was the worry, deep and constant, that filled his chest like a dark cloud. His sons didn't speak to each other anymore. Jack and Peter had once been close. As children, they played in the yard, ran after fireflies at night, and helped their father fix the fence. They were kind, strong, and full of joy. But something had changed over the years. Now they argued about everything: money, land, old memories, even about who loved their father more. It broke Grandpa Henry's heart. He didn't understand how his sons, who once shared toys and stories, could now barely speak without shouting. Every phone call ended in anger. Every family dinner ended in silence. And visits, they had stopped coming together a long time ago. If Jack came to visit, Peter wouldn't, and if Peter came, Jack stayed away. So Grandpa Henry sat alone in his little house, thinking about the past and fearing the future. One rainy afternoon, he sat by the window with a warm blanket over his knees. The wind blew softly, and drops of rain tapped the glass. He held a photo in his hand, a picture of his wife, himself, and their 2 sons when they were young. They were all smiling. It was taken during a picnic by the lake. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I wish you were here, Margaret," he whispered. "You always knew how to bring the boys together." He placed the photo on the table and looked outside. The big oak tree swayed in the wind, and a squirrel jumped from branch to branch. The world moved on, but his heart stayed stuck in worry. Just then the phone rang. He reached for it slowly, hoping it was one of his sons. "Hello," he said, his voice a little shaky. "Dad, it's Jack." His heart lifted for a moment. "Jack!" "How are you, son?" "I'm fine," Jack said, though he sounded tired. "Just checking in. Everything okay?" Yes, just sitting here, the rain's falling." There was a pause. "Have you heard from Peter?" Grandpa Henry asked gently. Jack's voice became cold. "No, and I don't plan to." "But, Jack, Dad, let's not talk about him." Before Grandpa Henry could say more, Jack added, "I'll call again next week. Gotta go." And the line went dead. He stared at the phone, feeling more alone than before. The next morning, the sun came out again. Birds returned to the fence. Grandpa Henry walked slowly to the garden and picked a few flowers to place near his wife's photo. Then he made a decision. "I must do something," he said aloud. "I can't let my sons keep fighting. I won't live forever. They need to make peace while I'm still here." He didn't have a grand plan yet, but he knew he had to try. Maybe a letter, maybe a meeting. Maybe he'd remind them of the good times, the times when love mattered more than pride. That day he took out an old notebook. It was dusty and worn, filled with recipes, phone numbers, and family notes. He turned to a blank page and started to write. "My dear sons," he began. The words were slow at first, but they started to flow. "I remember when you both were little, how you built forts in the living room, how you raced each other in the fields behind our house. You laughed so much. Your mother and I would smile from the kitchen, knowing we had done something right. You loved each other once. Please, don't forget that." He wrote for hours. When he finished, he folded the letter carefully. He made 2 copies, one for Jack and one for Peter. He placed each in an envelope and wrote their names on them. Then he sat back and smiled just a little. It was a small step, but it was a start. Later that week, he walked slowly to the mailbox. His knees ached, but his heart felt a bit lighter. He mailed the letters and looked up at the sky. "Please," he whispered to the wind, "help my boys find their way back to each other." He didn't know what would happen next, but he had taken the first step, and that meant something. Back. In the house, the silence still filled the rooms, but now hope sat beside him, quiet but present, and that made all the difference. It was a calm morning when Jack found the letter in his mailbox. He had just returned from the grocery store, carrying 2 bags of food and a head full of tired thoughts. Life had been busy. Work problems, bills to pay, and no one to talk to much. As he pulled the mail from the box, he saw the neat handwriting on a white envelope. "Jack, from Dad." He frowned and carried it inside. He placed the groceries on the kitchen counter and sat down with the letter in his hand. The sun peeked through the window, landing softly on the table. Jack slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written carefully in blue ink. "My dear son Jack, I hope this letter finds you. Well, I'm sitting at the window now, looking at the old oak tree. It still stands strong, just like it did when you and Peter used to climb it. I still remember your laughter when you slipped and fell into the grass, and how Peter helped you up. Miss that sound, your laughter, your voices, both of you together. Son, I'm writing not to make you angry, but because my heart is heavy. The house is too quiet now. I think about how close you two were, and I wonder, how did it come to this? Why do my sons, who once shared everything, now share only silence? Please, Jack, talk to your brother before it's too late. I don't know how many seasons I have left, but I do know this. I want to see you both in the same room again, smiling, not for me, but for your own hearts. Forgive each other. Start small. Say one kind word. Take one kind step. Love always. Dad Jack sat still for a long time. He read the letter again, and again. His chest felt tight. His eyes burned a little. He stood up and walked to the window, trying to push away the storm of feelings. Memories came back. He saw himself and Peter racing through the fields. He remembered a time they stayed up all night in a tent they built in the yard. They whispered secrets and dreams under the stars. He remembered Peter helping him with math homework. And he remembered their last fight. It had been ugly, harsh words, accusations, blame. Both of them walked away angry, and neither one looked back. Jack whispered, Maybe it doesn't have to stay like this." Miles away, Peter also received a letter. He found it in his mailbox after returning from the auto shop. He was tired, covered in grease, and ready to forget the day. But when he saw the envelope with Peter written in his father's careful handwriting, he paused. He sat on the front steps, opened the letter, and read, "My dear son, Peter, I hope this letter finds you in good health. I sat by the window today and thought of you. I remembered how you used to pick wildflowers and bring them to your mother. She loved that. She said you had a soft heart, even though you tried to hide it. Son, my heart is aching. I know you and Jack have had your troubles. I know words were said that hurt. But I also know the love between you is not gone. It may be buried deep, but it's still there. I am an old man now. I've lived a full life, but I want one more thing before I go. I want to see my sons speak to each other again, not as enemies, not with anger, but as brothers. Please, Peter, reach out to him. Even a small step means everything. Love always. Dad. Peter folded the letter and held it in his lap. He didn't speak for a while. His dog, Max, came and rested his head on Peter's knee. Peter scratched behind Max's ears and sighed. Do you think it's too late, boy? He asked the dog. Think he'd even want to hear from me? Max wagged his tail. Peter thought about calling Jack, but the idea made his stomach turn. It had been so long. What if Jack slammed the phone down? What if he just laughed? Still, something inside Peter began to shift. A small voice inside whispered, Dad is right. Back at Grandpa Henry's house, days passed. He didn't hear from either son. Not a call, not a letter. Still, he waited. He watered the flowers every morning and left birdseed on the windowsill. He took slow walks down the path behind his house, leaning on his cane, breathing in the summer air. He sat under the oak tree and listened to the wind through the branches. One morning, as he made tea in the kitchen, the phone rang. He picked it up. Quickly, hello? There was a pause, then, Dad, it's Peter. His heart jumped. Peter! Oh, son, I've been waiting to hear your voice. I got your letter, Peter said softly. It meant a lot. I'm glad you read it. I've been thinking, Peter continued, maybe I've been holding on to old pain for too long. Grandpa Henry said nothing. He let the silence give Peter space. I'm not saying everything can be fixed in a day, Peter said, but maybe I can try, if Jack will. Grandpa Henry's eyes filled with tears. That's all I ever hoped for. Do you think he'd even want to talk to me? I believe he does, Grandpa Henry said. He's just as hurt, just as proud, but also just as hopeful. Peter nodded, even though his father couldn't see. I'll call him, Peter said at last. Tomorrow. After they hung up, Grandpa Henry sat down and cried. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Then he picked up the phone again. This time, he called Jack. The next day, the phone rang in Jack's home. He didn't recognize the number, but something told him to answer. Hello? There was a pause. Then, Jack, it's Peter. Silence. Jack's heart thudded in his chest. I got Dad's letter too, Peter said. I figured maybe we could talk, just talk. Jack closed his eyes. He had imagined this moment so many times, sometimes angrily, sometimes hopefully. I'm listening, he said. And they talked. Not for long. Not everything was fixed, but they shared words that had been locked away for years. They spoke carefully, like people crossing a bridge that had once fallen apart. They ended the call quietly, but both had a small smile on their faces. Back at the little house with the oak tree, Grandpa Henry sat on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and pink. He rocked gently in his chair, holding a cup of tea. The birds were still singing. The phone had been quiet that evening, but his heart felt full. Hope had returned to his home, and for the first time in a long time, the silence no longer hurt. Next few days passed quietly. Grandpa Henry still watered the flowers, fed the birds, and sat in his old wooden chair by the window. But now there was something new in the air, a feeling of hope, a soft, quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, things were beginning to change. He had spoken to both Jack and Peter on the phone. They had spoken to each other too. No shouting, no blaming, just a short, careful conversation. But it was a start. Grandpa Henry knew it would take more than words on the phone to heal what had broken. Years of silence and hurt don't go away overnight. But he also knew something very important. His sons had opened a door. Now he had to help them walk through it. That weekend, Grandpa Henry got out his old family calendar. It was covered in notes, scribbles, and tiny red X marks. He turned the pages until he found the current week. He picked up a pen and circled Saturday. Then he picked up the phone and called Jack. "Son," he said gently, "I want to have lunch. Here at the house, just a simple meal. I'd like you to come." There was a short pause. "Okay, Dad," Jack said. "I'll come." Then Grandpa Henry called Peter. "Son," he said again, "I want to have lunch at home this Saturday. I'd like you to be here." Peter hesitated, but then answered, "All right, Dad, I'll be there." Grandpa Henry didn't tell either of them that the other one was coming. He wanted it to be a surprise, a good one, he hoped. When Saturday arrived, Grandpa Henry woke up early. He felt like a young man again, full of nerves and excitement. He cleaned the house, even the corners no one saw. He polished the wooden chairs, washed the windows, and swept the front steps. Then he began to cook. He made baked chicken with herbs, mashed potatoes with butter, and warm rolls from scratch. He even made his wife's old apple pie recipe, the one the boys used to fight over when they were little. By the time the clock reached 11:30, the house smelled like comfort and memories. Then the doorbell rang. It was Jack. He smiled at his father and held out a small box. "Brought you some tea," he said. "Your favorite." "Thank you, son," Grandpa Henry said. "Come in." Jack stepped inside and looked around. "House looks the same," he said softly. "It does," Grandpa Henry smiled. "Still standing?" "Like me." They sat and chatted for a while, mostly about simple things, the weather, the garden, the neighbor's noisy dog. Jack seemed relaxed, but he kept glancing at the clock. At exactly 12 Q, the doorbell rang again. Grandpa Henry's heart beat fast. He walked to the door slowly and opened it. Peter stood there, holding a bottle of apple cider. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Hope this goes with lunch." "It will," Grandpa Henry said, stepping aside. "Come in, son." Peter entered the house. The smell of food hit him and he smiled. Then he saw Jack. They both froze. Neither of them spoke. Grandpa Henry stood between them, watching. He felt like the air in the room had gone still. He opened his mouth about to speak. But then Peter said, "Didn't know you'd be here." Jack gave a short nod. "Same." Grandpa Henry waited. Then he said, "Well, now that you both are here, would you at least stay for lunch?" Peter looked at Jack. Jack looked at Peter. Finally, Jack shrugged. "Sure, I'm here." Peter nodded slowly. "Okay." They all moved to the dining room. A table was set neatly. There were plates, napkins, glasses, and a small vase of fresh flowers in the center. Grandpa Henry had even placed the old family photo near the window, the one from the picnic by the lake. The three of them sat down. For a few minutes, there was only the sound of forks and spoons. Then Grandpa Henry spoke. "This house has heard a lot over the years," he said. "Laughter, stories, even singing." He looked at both sons, but lately it's only heard silence. Jack and Peter didn't speak. He continued, "I'm not asking you to fix everything today. I just want one thing. I want my sons to eat. A meal at the same table again." Peter cleared his throat. "The food is good, Dad." Jack nodded. "Tastes like Mom's cooking." Grandpa Henry smiled. "She taught me well." The room warmed a little. Jack looked at Peter and said, "You remember when we helped her make apple pie and spilled the cinnamon all over the floor?" Peter chuckled. "Yeah, she made us clean it up while she laughed." "I blamed you," Jack said with a grin. "And I blamed you right back," Peter replied, shaking his head. Grandpa Henry listened to his son's laugh for the first time in years. It was a soft, quiet laugh, but it was real. After lunch, the three of them moved to the porch. They sat in the sunlight with cups of cider in their hands. Birds chirped, and the breeze carried the smell of fresh grass. Peter spoke first. "Jack, I know things got messed up between us." Jack stared at his drink. "Yeah, I've been angry a long time, maybe too long. Me too." Grandpa Henry looked at them but said nothing. Peter added, "I don't even remember how it started. I just know it hurt." Jack nodded. "Same here." Then Jack looked at Peter and said something simple but powerful. "I'm sorry." Peter blinked. "Me too." The two brothers sat side by side in silence, and the silence was no longer heavy. Later that day, as the sun started to set, Jack stood up and stretched. "I should get going. Got work in the morning." Peter stood too. "Yeah, me too." Grandpa Henry walked them both to the door. Before they left, Jack looked at Peter. "Maybe we could talk again sometime. Not about the past, just talk." Peter smiled. "I'd like that." They shook hands. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't dramatic, but it was something real. When they left, Grandpa Henry stood on the porch watching the road. He felt the sun on his face and the wind on his cheeks. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. That night, Grandpa Henry sat by the window with his notebook. He wrote, "Today, both my sons sat at my table. They laughed, they forgave. It was only a step, but it was the step I've prayed for. I may be old, but today my heart feels young again." He closed the book, placed it beside the photo of his wife, and whispered, "Margaret, they're coming." Back to each other. Then he went to bed, smiling. Hope once again filled the little house with the oak tree. The memory of that day stayed in Grandpa Henry's heart like a warm fire. He still smiled when he remembered Jack and Peter sitting at the same table talking, laughing a little, and sharing memories. He knew everything wasn't healed yet. There were years of hurt between them, but now something had changed. A door had opened, and they had both walked through it. That was all he had wished for. One quiet evening, while sipping tea on his porch, Grandpa Henry heard a car pull up. He looked up, surprised. It was Jack's truck. Jack stepped out, carrying a toolbox. "Afternoon, Dad," he said, smiling. "Well, well," Grandpa Henry said. "You came without a letter this time." Jack laughed. "I figured it was time to fix that squeaky front door." Grandpa Henry smiled wide. "That door has been squeaking for 10 years. Then it's overdue." Jack got to work. He oiled the hinges, tightened the screws, and even painted the wooden frame. Grandpa Henry sat nearby, watching with pride. "Your mother would have loved this," he said softly. Jack paused and looked up. "I think about her a lot these days." "Me too," Grandpa Henry replied. When Jack finished, he didn't leave. Right away, they sat together on the porch, listening to the wind move through the trees. A few days later, Peter visited. He brought Max, his dog, and a basket of groceries. "Thought I'd cook for you this time, Dad," Peter said. Grandpa Henry laughed. "Are you sure that's safe?" "I've been learning," Peter grinned. "Max is my taste tester. They cook together in the kitchen, just like in the old days." Peter made pasta with sauce and garlic bread. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of heart. As they ate, Peter asked, "Dad, do you think Jack's still angry?" Grandpa Henry shook his head. "I think he's waiting, just like you were." Peter thought for a while. "I want to try, I really do." "Then try," Grandpa Henry said. "Try today." Peter pulled out his phone, stared at it, then put it down. "Maybe tomorrow," he said. Grandpa Henry didn't push. Sometimes hearts need time to catch up with hope. Spring slowly came. The flowers in the front yard began to bloom. Birds returned, chirping in the trees. Grandpa Henry's garden came alive with color: yellow daffodils, purple tulips, and white lilies. One sunny afternoon, he planted new seeds behind the house. He wore his old straw hat and thick gloves. His knees hurt, but his heart was light as he worked. He heard two voices coming up the path. He turned around. Jack and Peter were walking side by side, together. They both waved. Jack was holding a bag of tools. Peter had a cooler in his hand. "What's all this?" Grandpa Henry asked, smiling. Peter answered, "We thought we'd fix that broken fence." Jack added, "And maybe have lunch after." Grandpa Henry's hands shook a little from joy. "I don't believe it," he whispered, but he did. Deep down, he had always believed this day would come. The brothers worked on the fence for hours. They sawed old wood, hammered new boards, and joked about who was the better builder. Grandpa Henry watched from his chair, heart full. At noon, they all sat in the grass and ate sandwiches. Peter pulled out a small speaker and played music their mother used to love. Jack even danced for a moment, making them all laugh. The sound of laughter filled the yard, not from one man, but from three, and the old house listened. It had been quiet too long. That evening the three sat on the porch again. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and pink. Grandpa Henry spoke softly. "You know, boys, your mother used to say, 'Rain falls, but flowers still bloom.' I think she meant that even after hard times, good things can still grow." Jack nodded. "We wasted too much time, Dad," Peter added, "but we're here now." "That's what matters," Grandpa Henry said. Jack looked at Peter. "Want to come by next Sunday? We could take Dad to the lake." Peter smiled. "I'd like that." Grandpa Henry's eyes filled with tears. "You two are giving me more than I could ever ask for." Peter stood and placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "No, Dad, you gave us everything. We just forgot for a while." The next Sunday, they went to the lake. They brought folding chairs, fishing rods, and a big picnic basket. Max the dog ran along the water, barking with joy. They fished, ate sandwiches, skipped rocks across the water, and talked for hours. Jack told old stories. Peter laughed so hard once that he fell off his chair. Grandpa Henry sat quietly for a moment, watching his grown sons smile like they were boys again. His heart was full. More than full. It was glowing. At one point Jack looked at Peter and said, "I was wrong back then, about a lot of things." Peter nodded. "So was I." Then they said something they hadn't said in years. "I love you, brother. I love you too." That night, back home, Grandpa Henry took out his notebook again. He wrote, "Today we went to the lake." Jack and Peter laughed like they were children again. The fence is fixed. So are their hearts, I think. I know I won't live forever, but this moment will. He closed the book and placed it on the nightstand. Then he turned off the light. As he drifted off to sleep, he whispered into the dark, "Thank you, Margaret. You were right. Love always comes back." Outside, the wind blew gently through the trees, and the house was no longer lonely. Days passed, then weeks, and just like the seasons change from spring to summer, so too did the feeling in Grandpa Henry's house. There was laughter again, there were phone calls, there were visits on weekends, and more than anything else, there was peace. But deep in Grandpa Henry's heart, he carried a quiet truth. He was getting older. His bones ached more. His hands shook more often. Some days it was harder to wake up, but he didn't complain. Not once. Instead, he felt thankful. Thankful for the time he still had, and thankful that his sons had come back to each other. He often looked at the photo of his wife, Margaret, and whispered, "They're all right now. We did it." One morning, Grandpa Henry woke up before the sun. It was still dark outside. The world was quiet. Not even the birds had begun to sing. He put on his slippers and robe and walked slowly to the kitchen to boil water for tea. As the kettle warmed, he looked around the room, really looked. He saw the table where his sons had shared a meal after years of silence. He saw the tiny stain on the floor where Peter had spilled cider. He saw Jack's cap still hanging on the hook near the door. He smiled. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He walked into the bedroom he once shared with Margaret and opened the top drawer of the wooden dresser. Inside was a letter. It was written in his wife's handwriting. He sat down on the bed and slowly unfolded the page. It read, "My dearest Henry, if you're reading this, it means I am no longer by your side. I want to say first, I love you. I loved you every day of our life together, and I will keep loving you, even from heaven. I know you. You're strong, but you worry too much. And if I know you well, and I do, you've spent many nights thinking about our boys, Jack and Peter. They fought, they stopped speaking, they hurt each other, and they hurt you. But Henry, please don't carry their pain as your own. They are good boys. Deep inside, they are still the same children who built tree houses and chased fireflies. They just lost their way, like all people do sometimes. I believe they will find each other again. Maybe not today, maybe not even next year, but they will, and you must stay strong until they do, because you are their bridge. You are the root that holds this family tree together. Please don't give up. Please wait for them. Love always." Margaret, tears rolled down Grandpa Henry's cheeks as he held the paper close. "I waited, Margaret," he whispered. "And you were." "Right." That evening, Jack called. "Hey, Dad," he said cheerfully, "what do you think about a family dinner next weekend? Me, Peter, and you. Maybe even some neighbors?" Grandpa Henry smiled. "That sounds wonderful, son." "You won't have to cook a thing," Jack said. "We'll handle it all." "Looking forward to it," Grandpa Henry replied. As he hung up the phone, his heart swelled with pride. He walked to the garden and picked a small bunch of lilies. He placed them in a vase on the kitchen table, Margaret's favorite. That weekend, the house was full of life. Peter came early with Max the dog and helped set up chairs outside. Jack brought trays of food, roasted chicken, cornbread, fruit salad, and chocolate pie. Neighbors came by with their kids. Laughter filled the air. There were music and stories, even some light dancing in the yard. But something unexpected happened just before dinner. Jack stood and raised a glass of apple cider. "I want to say something," he began. Everyone quieted. He looked at Grandpa Henry and said, "Dad, I know we gave you many sleepless nights. Peter and I were stubborn, foolish, and proud, but you never gave up on us, not once. You waited like Mom said you would, and because of that, we're here, together." Peter stood up beside him. "We wasted years, but now we're making up for it, and we're not going to stop." They both lifted their glasses. "To Dad," everyone echoed. "To Dad." Grandpa Henry's eyes were full of tears, but his smile was steady. "I don't need gifts," he said quietly. "Just this, just you boys here, talking, laughing. That's the only thing I ever wanted." Later that night, when the house was quiet again, Grandpa Henry sat on the porch under the stars. Peter came out and sat beside him. "Dad," Peter said softly, "do you think Mom would be proud of us?" Grandpa Henry looked at the sky. "She already is," Peter nodded. "I'm thinking of writing her a letter." "You should," Grandpa Henry said. "She always loved your writing." Jack stepped outside too, holding 3 mugs of warm tea. "Hot and chamomile," he said, passing the cups. They sat together in silence, sipping tea, feeling the peace between them. The next morning, Grandpa Henry didn't wake up early like he usually did. Jack came by to check on him. He knocked softly, then opened the door. He found his father lying in bed, peaceful, a smile on his face. On the nightstand sat Margaret's letter, open, and beside it was Grandpa Henry's notebook with a new page written, "My boys have come home to each other. The bridge has been rebuilt. My job is done and my heart is full. If I leave this world tonight, I leave with peace." Jack stood there for a long time, tears falling silently. Then Peter came in behind him. Neither of them spoke. They sat beside their father and held his hands. Together. A few weeks later, Jack and Peter stood in front of the town church. People filled the seats, neighbors, friends, family. They spoke of Grandpa Henry's life, of his kindness, his quiet strength, his deep love. Peter read a letter to the crowd, a letter he had written to their father after his passing. "Dear Dad," he began, his voice shaking, "we thought we had more time, but you gave us more than enough. You gave us each other. You gave us a home and a second chance. And now we'll carry your name forward, not in sorrow but in joy, because you didn't just wait for us, you believed in us." Jack finished the last lines. "We love you, Dad, and we promise the family you held together with your 2 hands, we'll keep it together with ours." That evening, back at Grandpa Henry's house, the brothers sat on the porch. The house was quiet now, but not lonely. Inside, the kitchen still smelled of pie, the porch still held the warmth of shared stories, and the yard still bloomed with spring flowers. Peter turned to Jack. "Let's keep this house going." Jack nodded. "Let's fill it with love." They clinked their mugs together and looked out at the oak tree, tall and steady, just like their father. The end.